This is CX of M Radio, the voice of customer experience professionals.
Hello and welcome to another World of UX podcast. This is your host, Darren Hood. Thanks everybody for taking the time to join us on today. And as always, a special welcome to those of you listening for the first time. We are going to play the conclusion of our Talkin Shop session that I had with Manisha, and we are not going to waste any time. We're going to dive right in. This is a really energetic, it's a powerful session. So enjoy. Let's get started. So that was excellent. What you mentioned about the mentoring journey, that was some really fantastic stuff. And it really bugs me sometimes when I see how the concept of mentoring is really being trivialized today. A lot of people bring up mentoring. They don't even know what they mean when they're saying mentoring. So I love to hear about what you've done from a mentoring perspective. And that's been great. So I think people are going to love having learned about that. Next topic up, something else that came up when we were warming up was you talked about UX as it comes to brand equity. And I think that that's also something that's fantastic. I think you have some great things to say from a thought leadership perspective about that topic. So go ahead and take it away and just elaborate on your thoughts on UX and brand equity.
Yeah. Thanks. It's a topic that is close to my heart simply because branding or brand, as we think from a professional standpoint, is different than a consumer. A consumer does not actively think of a brand or its brand equity, but is experiencing that through the different touch points, why they prefer one product versus, to another, or one service to another. They equate those experiences over time, and that's the brand equity, right? And when you think about it from a user experience standpoint, especially for digital products, the ease of use, the usefulness, the value that they are, people are provided is the brand equity. So I think as UX designers, we really need to think about the contribution that UX is making towards your brand equity or the evolution of your brand as well.
Yes.
So I think that should be something designers are conscious of and take pride in building.
Absolutely. And I know I mentioned that the same thing when I'm talking about UX strategy. And a lot of times we don't have UX strategy on our radar. And so many people are so busy looking at the work, again, what we do on this podcast all the time, that there's a lot of other elements, a lot of other aspects, a lot of nuances associated with UX that get missed. And when we miss it and we don't deliberately engage, we're missing opportunities. We're missing opportunities to make impact. We're missing opportunities to sort of embed ourselves in the hearts of the decision makers in our organizations who think that all we do is make things look pretty or that we just design things. We are leaders. UXers are leaders, but people have to evolve to a point where they're ready to function at a leadership level. And when we do, wow, the impact we can have, it's off the charts. It's off the charts. So yeah, this is definitely the brand equity piece, knowing that we're always driving some type of brand recognition with the work that we do for the discipline that we're engaged with, if we'll just take the time to pay attention to it and engage. I think that's fantastic. Another topic you brought up, which I know people are going to love to hear this as well. You spent some time telling me about how you transitioned into leadership as a UX leader. And if I remember correctly, also you you talked about, I think it sort of also piggybacks on piggybacks, I should, on the mentoring piece, that helping people to be aware of making transitions, if I remember correctly, but correct me if I'm wrong, but tell the listeners a little bit about your thoughts with regard to transitioning into leadership. I think you have some great things to say here that folks will value as well.
One thing that designers or the UX community in general needs to think about is their career trajectory and what they believe their strengths are. For me, it was more accidental when people that were surrounding me, especially leaders, saw some of those traits
Yep.
within me and actually singled me out. I was happy doing a lot of the design work. I didn't consciously think about going into leadership. So again, I'm coming from, a privileged position here of being singled out. It's not that easy for a lot of for a lot of individuals.
Mm-hmm.
But what I learned was that yes, I do have that ability of building teams, scaling teams, rallying people, motivating. And so I sort of work on those skills and then transitioned. I also learned a lot from the leaders that were supporting me at that time. What I did realize too is that while that's a great career trajectory, it's not the only one.
Yeah.
And that actually gave me pause. It actually made me feel good because not everyone is cut out to be a leader or a manager.
Right.
But you will have just as great opportunities if you continue down the individual contributor path and see just as strong a success path, continuing being an individual contributor, but simply at a higher level.
Yes.
You're going to be compensated. You're going to have the same impact. You will likely have the same job satisfaction as well. I think that as designers, designers or researchers, we need to be aware that we have those options and really see what's your calling, right? And playing to your strengths.
Yes.
I must have wasted years in trying to work on my weaknesses.
Uh-huh.
Instead, I should have pivoted a lot sooner into just playing to my strengths. And once I realized the true value of that, I've just never looked back, and I've stopped fussing about the fact that I'm never going to be a coder, or that I'm not going to be able to do a lot of other things that people would expect, or that I falsely expected myself to believe that I needed to do.
Yeah. It's funny hearing you say that. Reminds me of how, we have to have a strategy to grow, right? We do. And it needs to be deliberate. But when you say that, and I started chuckling because it reminded me, many of us who were doing UX stumbled into it.
Yeah.
Before it was called UX, we stumbled into it. You listen to the Jesse James Garrett's of the world and the Jacob Nielsen's of the world and the Susan Weinschenks of the world. Everybody stumbled into this. It didn't exist in the mid-90s. And then these positions slowly start to pop up everywhere. And what did we do back then? Did we work on our weaknesses? You know what? No, we didn't know what they were. We had no idea. If you take that same model and look at everything you just mentioned, take that same model, people move to the top of the UX food chain, so to speak, by doing exactly what you just said, just riding on their strengths. And as we stumbled into UX, we will stumble into opportunities to strengthen our weaknesses naturally. It's going to happen organically. Something is going to come up. I mean, I think about back on my back in the mid 2000s, and I was working for a large digital creative agency, and the iPhone came out. Now, when the iPhone came out, we were, of course, already working on websites. We were also working on interactive TV, and we were working on placement of advertisements in gaming. We were working on, I did some work for USA Networks as a UX consultant, where they had a TV show that had a game, a role-playing game that people could engage with. And when people were doing this, they needed to have, I mean, these opportunities came up. Were you sitting around thinking about being a consultant to help optimize the user experience for a role-playing game? Who was thinking about that? It's something that just came up. The same thing will happen to us today in 2023. It's no different. If you know that you're strong at certain things, you've assessed who you are, you know you have a stronger personal UX maturity when it comes to certain things, and you know that you don't when it comes to other things, there will be opportunities that will arise that will force you to get better at something in order to deliver quality and to deliver value. So, you know, when we choose in and of ourselves what to work on, and it's not that we can't, but when we choose it, it could be time wasted. If you focus on getting even better at your strengths, I mean, you could really almost go either way, but don't get so caught up in working on your weaknesses that you fail to realize that you're going to have opportunities that are going to arise that will force you to get better. And if you're ready for it, you will rise to the challenge. So I absolutely love that. We don't have to go one particular way to make ourselves better or to get better. It's not really.
I finally realized just how much anxiety I was introducing into my own life.
Yes, exactly.
By stressing over things that were not coming to me naturally. I forcing myself to learn how to code, for instance, and deluding myself by thinking that I will somehow be a better professional if I know how to design and code.
Yep.
And actually somehow, falsely like going down that path where I started having symptoms of, like imposter syndrome even, right? Because you're trying to force yourself to do something that you're not going to be good at, or that does not come to you easily. And it was after I finally realized that I've been stressing about the wrong thing, I just instead focused on my strengths and, getting better at those every day. And I have not looked back since.
Yeah. And it's funny. Everybody has strengths, right?
Oh, absolutely. Everybody does.
It's like, and we shouldn't take that for granted. We shouldn't take our strengths for granted. So they do need to be cultivated. Something else that hit me when you were talking about the working on the different weaknesses and such is that, can you work on those weaknesses? And again, I'm not saying not to.
Right.
But when you do, how often when you're working on developing those weaknesses, how many opportunities do you have for assessment while you're developing those weaknesses? If it's a weakness of yours, how do you know how you're doing? Which can make it even more difficult. And I completely forgot to mention one of the points I was trying to get at too. We're working on interactive TV and all these other things. When the iPhone opportunity came up, none of us knew what we were doing. And we all had to rise to the challenge immediately. And I became a subject matter expert on mobile design right out the box.
Yeah.
Right out the box. And was the go-to person. I ended up developing mobile best practices for 2 digital design agencies as a result of my extreme exposure to working in this arena. So, don't take this unplanned opportunity pathway for lightly. Don't take it lightly, because it can be phenomenal. The way that AI has come up for a lot of people, and I've got to dive into AI a little bit more. I don't like the propositions that are coming up about it for the most part, because most of what I see with AI is really has to do with using AI to do what I do better. And I'm like, I don't need a crutch. And I see it as a crutch. I know that AI is going to end up being a good thing to use, but we've got to find the use cases from a UX practitioner perspective. We need to solidify those before we can really make proper progress. And I know Dr. Nick and some other people are doing some things, Patrick Neiman, these people are doing some things with AI where they're finding good use cases for it. And Dr. Nick is quick to say, it's not supposed to replace us. If anything, it can enhance what we do. And it can be a competitive differentiator when you're applying for a job in the future. But these people who keep trying to say, well, I need it to help me I can interview AI. I don't even have to interview real users. See, that kind of malpractice-oriented stuff is just, it's too rampant today. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't learn about it.
Yeah,
it doesn't
definitely.
But
I think that
yeah,
UX designers absolutely need to be aware of AI and ML and consciously think about what that means to them and how would they leverage it, actually.
Yes.
As opposed to think of it as an adversary.
Yes, that's the word, leverage.
Yeah. Leverage it. That is how we are. Humans are and will continue to be, maybe for a finite time, will continue to be the smarter of the species between, human intelligence and AI.
Mm-hmm.
And we should not let AI spook us.
Yes.
For that. You are still going to need, the world still will need designers. It will still need engineers to get beyond the AI. So do not stress yourself that AI is going to mean less jobs for designers. No, your skills will evolve even beyond what you can imagine you're doing today.
Yes.
That is how we've evolved as a species, if you really think about it.
Right. Well, we're going to consider this a bonus topic because I think what we said here, people need to hear this as well. It's really critical. And if we can approach AI with a critical thinking mindset, which is all I'm advocating for, because some people are like, you're against AI. Not against AI. I'm against doing anything stupidly.
Yeah.
And I'm not against driving, but I don't want you to drive stupidly. So I'll speak about making sure to drive the right way so that you don't have any issues or have any unnecessary rough spots. So I just want people to do things responsibly is the word that I was thinking of that come to mind. We need to approach AI responsibly, and to the great extent we're not. And so then I keep waving the flag and trying to get people, hey, pay attention to this, pay attention to this.
Yeah.
It's going to be, I'm using AI in other arenas, and it's phenomenal when it comes to, my photography work. I use AI in my photography work. I know how to use it to supplement what I'm doing. I know how to use it not to replace skill, but to enhance what I produce. And that's what AI is really for. I don't know why people keep wanting to replace things. That's where we have to come off of that mindset. And this whole learn UX in 6 months is part of the same mindset where people are trying to accelerate things instead of trying to supplement or trying to get somewhere in an abnormally fast period of time. When if you get somewhere in 60 seconds, go from 0 to 60 in 60 seconds, but you don't understand the journey, what did you accomplish by getting there in 60 seconds, or going from 0 to 60 in 6 seconds, so to speak? We need to be willing to, UXers, and thinking again about the whole topic of that transitioning into leadership and your own personal evolution. We have this thing where we're managing, again, our journey, and we want to do it in a way that is void of dysfunctional contributing factors. And so if we move too fast, then we end up not understanding and appreciating the journey. If we move too fast, if you go through an art institute, I always like to use this metaphor. If you go into an art institute, you're not going to run through the institute. You're going to walk. You're going to be deliberately slow, and you're going to be observant. And I think it's really important that we do the same thing as we develop as UX professionals, to move in a deliberate manner so that we can observe and digest everything that's happening to us, so that we can progress in a way, walk through the art, observe through the institute, observe the art, who created this, maybe go and study some of the people who you'll have a greater appreciation when you go through an art institute, when you learn something about the person who created the art, when you understand what their mindset was as they were creating the art. There are different mindsets that we can have as we approach the art that help us to appreciate and digest it better. There are people who are growing in UX today that are moving so fast that they can't digest and understand things, and that has a way of sort of boomeranging. Yeah, boomeranging back at your development and short-circuiting you to an extent where you will eventually, I talk all the time about people who don't have an understanding or an appreciation for UX history. Not having an understanding and an appreciation for UX history causes people to be victimized by those who repackage old methods and methodologies and treat it as if it's something new. There are people, because they don't understand UX history, they are quicker to fall for a lot of different snake oil sales and different things, and Kool-Aid, people offering them Kool-Aid. Whereas if you had knowledge of the history, you wouldn't fall for certain things, and you'd be quicker to question certain things when it's time and appropriate to question certain things. It'd be done. So I hope people will understand and embrace that, and we'll all be better off for it, the more people that do. So there's some interesting stuff there. Transitioning. So we had that bonus, having a healthy mindset, or a healthy AI mindset added in. Let's talk a little bit as we go into the home stretch here. Let's talk a little bit about the job market. I know you and I had a lot to say about this. I hope we remember everything now that we're recording, but what are your thoughts about today's job market? I know we're going to really go back and forth on this part. What's happening in the job market today? Is it looking up now with all these layoffs that a lot of people have been subjected to and gone through? What are your thoughts about today's UX job market at large?
My opinion is that right now it does seem like there are more opportunities, but I want to say take it with a grain of salt, because this is an opinion only based on a very skewed sample size, because my network of professionals are all UX designers. Am I seeing, is this a bias that I have just based on the sampling, right, of data that I have access to? So it does seem like there are more opportunities opening up. The trend, though, that at least in the few opportunities that I have looked at, seem like there is an emphasis to go back on site, to go back to the office, or be in a hybrid environment. And I was hoping that having proved this, that we can function just as well or even better remotely is a situation that we would have learned from and transitioned from for good, for the greater good of people, so that they can live better lives and use their time wisely with their family, right? As opposed to commuting to work and so forth. So it's an interesting landscape that I will continue watching and seeing how that progresses over time.
Yes, it is interesting. And especially as we move into, I mean, different companies have different um, financial schedules. And so some companies are coming up on the end of the year. Some companies are, I mean, they don't end their fiscal year until December. A lot of companies, people don't realize they're making decisions based on that. And something else I mentioned before we started recording too, and I want this to be out there. I would love to learn more about this. I felt that I got what I'm about to mention from a reliable source. But it's interesting that someone mentioned to me that the government is actually incentivizing companies to lay people off. That was something, a hidden factor associated with a lot of the layoffs that were taking place because of how they wanted the layoff some kind of way. And I don't understand it. Even after the person explained to me, I still don't get it. But because it seems backwards to me, but they feel that the layoffs help to have a positive impact on inflation. I don't know how that works. Maybe somebody else does. To me, from a novice perspective, when it comes to things like that, if people have jobs, they spend more money. So I don't get it. If people are laid off, they don't spend as much money. So I don't, from that perspective, and I think a lot of other people are probably with me, we don't understand that. But I would hope that whether that's accurate or not, and I don't know, that's, of course, I'm not an expertise in that arena, so I don't know. But I would hope that that this will change in the not too distant future. I've been in corporate America since 1982, and I was laid off recently, and it's the first time I've ever been laid off in my life. Had nothing to do with performance, had nothing to do with anything like that. Totally budgetary related at a company whose the end of their fiscal year was approaching.
Yeah.
And they wanted to have good effect or impact on the end of the year, and they cut budgets, and it just so happened that projects I was working on were impacted by those budget cuts. I hope that it changes, because I had always been of the impression, it was always my thought, that UX was a discipline that was recession proof. And just throwing that in here. And I'm not saying we're in a recession, but I think it's related. You always need people that are working on qualified people to work on your UX, because if you don't, all companies, I should say, are in business to make money. UX, when done right, has tremendous impact, always, on the bottom line of a company's operation. So I was always of the mindset, when we went through, they said we were in a recession years ago. There were no layoffs back then. When that recession took place, the companies had a better understanding and they knew how to value UX more. It's weird when you consider that UX maturity has regressed in the last 5 years. And so since that recession, and then now, and a lot of crazy hiring practices that a lot of companies have engaged with as well, resulted in UX people being laid off, and the companies still hire people who really don't understand UX to run their UX operations. And I've talked about that on other episodes. We won't get into that today because we'll go down a rabbit hole I don't think we want to go down right now. But I do hope that we see a rebound in the job market. It does appear that there's a lot more positions of note that are being open roles that are showing up, although people like me companies are not quick to interview people like me. They don't want people, and people. I've said this before, and that long series I did about the UX job market. Companies say they want UX people, and they don't. And you can tell by the people who tell you about the rejection notices they get, as well as when you find out who got hired.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Manisha.
no, I was just saying, Darren, you said so much over there that makes sense. Couple of things that stood out to me, the whole government, the thing that you were talking about. My speculation about that is only that is, cities and states incentivize organizations so that they can come and have a presence in a given state, right? Those are incentives uh, for the state because it's bringing in employment. The
Mm-hmm.
pandemic sort of reset that. All of a sudden, people realize that they could be anywhere and still operate and still be productive, which means that people are no longer tethered to a particular location,
Yeah.
right? Which in over long term might disincentivize states or local governments, cities, from having workforce or a community. So the only thing that I, like the thread that I feel like or connect dots is are the city planners and officials wanting these employers to lay off their remote workforce and then have a strategic plan to rehire them on site or come back so that they can revive their downtowns, they can revive all the old office buildings that are laid bare, right? Like I can't, and again, this is a speculation. I have no evidence, but I wonder if that is what triggered, because otherwise you would think that why would you want to do that? Um, as far as UX designers being recession proof, absolutely. And I actually put this blame largely on the organizations that just went crazy nuts over on this hiring spree,
Yeah.
uh, because they were riding the tide of the pandemic and wanted to cash in on everything that the pandemic was bringing in. And they just had this knee-jerk reaction of getting hold of anybody who had a title of a UX researcher or a designer and hiring these people. Fast forward to late last year and this year, all of a sudden, they realized that due to inflation, a lot of those projects are either on hold or have disappeared, and now they cannot retain their staff.
Mm-hmm.
And probably also realized that on this crazy hiring spree, they have hired people who are less than desirable simply because they had a title, which at some point, Darren, we should talk about UX appropriation. There has been happening where the title or what UX brings to the table has been appropriated by other agencies or other disciplines which are encroaching
Ooh.
on this. It's crazy, and it's part
Yes.
of it I feel is due to the rise of the your boot camps or other people who just want to cash in on that. UX is one of those disciplines that are are high paying, highly skilled, on par with other roles such as product managers or engineers uh, is a point of envy for other fields where you are not compensated as highly. And so there's appropriation because, we see that this is a creative role. How may we steal this title?
Oh, yes. And that's where you see things like the democratization
Yes.
come into play. And sadly, there are people in the UX community who are getting rich off of it. The whole everybody's a designer mindset. You have a famous unnamed person, although everybody's going to know who I'm talking about here.
Oh, I know too.
I mean, they'll say everybody's a designer, knowing good and well that everybody's not. And they know good and well that this is a science. And they say everybody's a designer, and they use the word design loosely, or designer loosely. And when they say that, they're looking at, I mean, anybody can go in a room. We just had a workshop here locally. Something is called painting with a twist. Everybody painted something. Everybody produced something.
Right.
And the mindset is that anybody can design. That's where they come up with everybody's a designer mindset. But when it comes to coming together and everybody painting something and throwing something on canvas, everybody painted something. Nobody did anything scientifically, and you couldn't sell everything that came out of there. And when you look at the everybody's a designer mindset, everybody is not a UX designer. UX is a science.
Yeah.
It's a science. We're scientists, technically speaking. And I was just telling somebody earlier about a situation where the way that everybody, the appropriation is taking place, that's part of where the whole design thinking workshop and all that stuff come together. Where can design thinking workshops work? Yeah. I mean, and I know, because I know that design thinking is nothing but rebranded UX work. That's really all that it is.
Yeah.
But and I love the mindset of how often can you get all of these stakeholders and people in one place and get them to commit to being there for that period of time? I say, do it and take advantage of the time.
Yeah.
I don't care what you call it. Do it and take advantage of the time, because you can get a lot of great information out of these people together and to get them all together at the same time, let alone getting them for any length of time. But the thing that hits me about this is these people, and the thing I was telling somebody about earlier, these people who appropriate our work, they don't understand it. And so when somebody tries to do something that it takes a specialized set of knowledge and skill to do, there's no way in the world you're going to arrive at the same conclusion. There's no way. And what I was telling somebody about earlier today was how that somebody, there were people who were trying to understand, at one job I had, they were trying to understand what I did. And I'm always willing to share. Keep in mind, I'm not going to tell them, yeah, this is what I do, and by the way, you can't do it. I'm not going to say that. But if you want to learn more about it, I know that helping people understand is a part of driving and managing UX maturity, so I'm going to do it. But what I found was that people would listen to me, and then they would go out and try to do what I said I was doing. I gave you a Reader's Digest condensed version. I gave you a bird's eye view, not detail. You can't do that. And I saw people trying to go and take requirements and then try to devise something, try to digest those. And I'm not saying that product managers and product owners and other people can't do that. They can. You just simply, but you can't do it. Figure that you reach the conclusion that you digested the requirements, and then come back, make some decisions, and then come back to the UX person and then give orders. UX people are not order takers. And I was in situations where people tried to reduce the UX people to order takers. And okay, and you came up with stuff. Hey, I appreciate the work. You want to collaborate on this? Fine. I'm good with that. I'm still comfortable in my skin and I'm still not moving. So If you came up with stuff and you feel like you want to give me orders, you basically just stripped me of the authority associated with the work that I do. You feel that you understand the requirements, but I still don't. So I still need to see the requirements and I still need to digest it. And that's the kind of stuff that's happening with this appropriation, where people want to remove us from the equation and then demote us. And corporations have been trying to reduce our salaries and strip us down for years. And it's just an evolved version of it when somebody does something like that. For those of you listening to the show and don't know, UX people are not order takers. We digest, we make recommendations, we are leaders. And when people try to reduce us to being less than a leader, that's a proposition that's not on the table. You may try, you may do it, not going to work. And it's going to take UX. UX is going to have the siege that I'm talking about. You know, you call it appropriation. I always called it the siege. That's what I've always referred to it as. And if the siege continues, UX is going to have to explode for people to realize we were wrong. Let's leave it to the experts. The question is, who's going to be left when all that dust settles? Because it's happening as we speak. And as you said, Manisha, it's happening. But it's not happening for the good of the business. It's not happening for the good of the users. And people are not going to realize that it doesn't work until they see profits dwindle. They're not going to recognize. Yeah. So the UX people already see it, but nobody listens to us because they're always trying to look at us as if we're not saying anything of note anyway. I remember people saying, "That's your opinion." No, it's an expert opinion. The question is, how long will it take for you to realize that?
Yeah, and I so hear you on that. And for me, the way I see it is that I will continue getting frustrated if I respond to a lot of that. I do as much as I can, and at the end of the day, I just choose to preserve my sanity and hope that there will just be a culling that will allow, the best to rise to the top, right? So that so that businesses or anything that any entity that wants to work, needs UX designers, don't get scammed or, don't get scammed essentially, right? The value that UX provides will prevail. I've seen it. I personally have experienced it and have been fortunate to preserve that within the organizations that I've worked in. So it does, that makes me feel very optimistic. My only concerns are over this indiscriminate rise of fake UX or for UX, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Right? Because that is harming the UX community. That is taking us back to where we started from and undoing a lot of the strides that we made in upholding UX as a core business competency, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is what frustrates me the most. It is not the individuals, it's the rhetoric and the narrative that keeps emerging with, whether that's democratizing, whether that's saying that anybody can design, whether that's saying that design is easy.
Yep.
Contrary to think about it, good design is difficult, actually.
Yes. Love that.
Good design is hard. Design is not easy. It only looks easy. It's because there's a lot of people who've put in hard work to make it look easy. And that's the irony behind it.
Yes. Yes, it is. Fantastic. That's fantastic. Last topic. Last topic. And this probably the biggest one of all from a potential time consumer, but we'll see where it goes. We were talking about UX, the use of UX/UI. And I've already quoted you. Because I love what you said. I've said it before, but you said it differently, and I like the way you said it better. You talked about UX/UI from a grammatical perspective or from a structural perspective, and I just start cracking up like, yes, you're right. You can't. People don't realize what they're saying when they say UX/UI, and I'm sort of getting ahead of it already. But let's just talk about anything related to UX/UI, and you can repeat what you said about the what that means, the use of the slash and what it implies and things of that nature. But this will be our closing topic. So go ahead and take it away, Manisha.
Yeah, I mean, the forward slash, if you really think as a punctuation that's used in English, is to mean or.
Uh-huh.
So when you say UX, UI, you're essentially saying UX or UI. There is nothing or about UX and UI. It is UX and UI. That still makes sense.
Yes.
If you still say UX, you probably will include UI in it. So I hate how UX UI has become a thing, and it totally like I just lose it. I have to stop and get on my soapbox every single time I see it. And I've started seeing organizations do it.
Yeah.
I've started seeing so-called coaches, life coaches, and career coaches and design experts do it. And all I want to tell them is stop.
Yeah.
What are you trying to create here? And what is the agenda behind this? Because there's no such thing as UX, UI. There's no such thing as UI, UX. Quit saying that.
Yeah. It's supposed to be either or. Either or. You could say and. You really can't say or. It's funny. I had a social media post where I visualized this, and I was talking about what that people don't know what they're saying when they say it. They definitely don't know the impact that it has when people hear it, which is supposed to be what we do. We're supposed to know how things impact the people who partake with what we do, and we're supposed to change and alter. We're supposed to modify. We're supposed to come up with whatever. We don't just hear it and do nothing. So UX people are supposed to be aware of how things impact people and then change accordingly or move accordingly. And you see people that say, or on the social media posts, you see people that say it, and I took UX and made it bigger. For those who can digest what I'm about to say, UX was presented in like a font size of about 250 pixels, and UI, then there was a slash, and the slash UI was about 20 pixels. UX is so much more than UI that saying it with a slash does a gross disservice to the people who hear it. To the people who are still learning about UX, when they hear UX/UI, people are actually being taught that they're interchangeable.
Yeah.
They're taught that they're interchangeable. So now here you are trying to learn about UX, and somebody is teaching you something completely different. They're teaching you something you're going to have to unlearn. And then the people who hear it, then they go out and start saying it. So it's almost like it's almost like a disease, because people hear it and then they go and they carry it to somebody else. And everybody who embraces it and duplicates it they're spreading the disservice even further. So it's really important that people understand that UX is not UI. UI is not UX. UI is a subset of UX, just like information architecture is, and just like UX research is, and just like heuristics and usability and interaction and interface design itself. Because you can't even have UI without interaction design principles. If you just have an interface, and God help the people who are trying to use it. So all of these things, UX is an umbrella term. There's no UX slash nothing. You can't say UX slash IA. You can't say UX slash UX research. You can't say UX slash usability. They're all under. They're all a part of. They all came together, and we all know them as UX principles. And so we say UX as a catch-all, actually. And people need to learn that. They need to understand that. Everybody who doesn't know that, we're all in this together, and we all impact one another. But some of us are doing things that are detrimental to the discipline, and some of us are making ourselves responsible for trying to help people to overcome that. Not because we're on a high horse, but because we care about the direction and the state of the discipline.
Yeah.
And when people embrace things that are ridiculous, it actually makes you think about something you said earlier with people with the fake UX. Would you embrace anybody who brought you counterfeit money? I'd say no. Nobody wants a counterfeit. Nobody wants anybody handing them counterfeit money. So when somebody hands you something and says, hey, here's some resources to help you learn more about UX, UI, they're offering you something that's the equivalent of giving you counterfeit money. In other words, they're giving you something that eventually the only way that you can get away with passing that tender off in conducting a transaction is because the people receiving it don't know it. And so now people think that things have value because something is received, when the truth is the only reason they received it is because they don't know any better.
And I think people need to understand the gravity of the situation here as well.
Yep.
Would you trust a person just having a title of a surgeon without actually having the experience and the certification and a degree, whatever you want to call that, endorsement of actually being being a surgeon? No, you would not. UX is actually one of those core disciplines which actually makes a difference, not just in people's lives, but you got to think about situations like UX is part of cockpit designs in airplanes. It is part of hospitals and healthcare. It is part of so many different things. We are, UX designers are part of the team that builds turn-by-turn directions, all of which can impact people's lives. You do not want to trust people who have a fake title. So please be very cognizant of whom you're promoting, whom you're democratizing UX for, because you have an internal agenda of selling your own wares, right? You're selling your business. You've got a training plan that is targeted to product managers or business analysts. And you're saying, hey, do you know that anybody can design? Come, I got a training program for you.
Yeah. And that's what they do. I didn't mention that. That's what they're doing with everybody's a designer bit. They say everybody's a designer. Then people go, oh, really? And then people, because they want to be a designer, they opt in to that false rhetoric. And the person who said it because he's the one that's going to come to you later and teach you how to design, of course, for $25,000, $35,000, $40,000, $50,000. So it's a racket. And we need to evict the racket from ranks. We need to evict it so we can be. It's not until there's, I call it the cult of UX, and there's pure UX, and until pure UX reigns, we're not going to be respected. We're not going to be respected as discipline because the leadership, they see the guff that folks are putting out there. They see it. They may not see it initially, but eventually they will. They're smart people. That's why they're in their C-suite. They're smart. They have some sense, and they see the gobbledygook and they don't want it. And that's also behind a lot of the layoffs and things like that. It's all connected. So we need to rise up as a discipline together and do the right things. And when we do, we'll benefit for it. And I hope to see good things for the discipline in the future. But right now we're cutting through the bush, so to speak, of the discipline. We're in a rough way. We're fighting the siege that I always talk about. And that's where we are. But if we rise up, embrace real UX, do things the right way, put things back where they belong, stop putting square pegs in round holes, and vice versa, then we'll start to reap the benefits of proceeding in such an honorable fashion. The honorable process generates honorable results. And I think everybody would love to see honorable results, except for the people that don't want to learn and don't want to do, but that'll take me down another street. But this has been dynamite. Manisha, we got to do this again. And thank you for taking the time out of your day to share with people in the UX community. People are going to absolutely love this. And do you have any closing words for the audience today before we sign off?
I just want to say thank you, Darren, for inviting me to share my thoughts. It's been an honor, and it's just been such great conversations, right? Although the topics were so diverse, I felt like we were just transitioning into it, which is the beauty of people who've done the things and had have experienced a wide variety of flavors of UX over the course of the years. There are so many topics that I would love, one day to come back, Darren, and talk. One particular one that's close to my heart is that I'm starting to see things that are concerning me around the UX community where there's not enough inclusion and diversity. As a person of color, as a woman and a person of color, I am dismayed at how we are systematically shut down in our voice on social media platforms. I do not see any kinship or partisanship being extended, and that to me is concerning. I think that's a topic that I would love to share with you, and I think you would also have experiences that you would be able to share on that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Let's get that on the calendar. Let's do that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again, Manisha. Thank you to all our listeners out there. But it is time to wrap this episode up. So until next time, this is Darren Hood, the host of The World of UX. Thanks again for listening. And until next time, remember, as always, happy UXing, everybody.
Thanks for joining us for this session of CX of M Radio. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and visit cxofm.org for more resources.